The Zarnak Empire thought it would be easy. For years they had ruled the stars with strong ships and cold hearts. They believed they could do anything. They thought they could take what they wanted and no one would stop them. One day near the far edge of the galaxy, a small human mining ship floated quietly near an asteroid belt. The people on board were just workers, simple miners collecting rock and minerals to send back to Earth. They were not soldiers. They had no weapons. They were just doing their jobs. Without warning, a Zarnak patrol ship appeared. The humans were surprised but not afraid. They had no reason to be. They had not crossed any borders. They had not broken any rules. The area they were in was neutral space, open to all, but the Zarnak didn't care. They didn't ask questions. They didn't speak. They simply locked onto the ship and boarded it. The miners didn't fight back. Why would they? They didn't understand what was happening. One by one, the 10 miners were pulled from their ship. They asked why. They asked what was going on, but the Zarnak gave no answers. The commander only said trespassing. That was all. There was no trial, no report, no message sent to Earth. The humans were not allowed to speak. Their names were not recorded. Their stories were not told. Then, in silence, the Zarnak spaced them. To space, someone means to push them out of an airlock into the black, cold, deadly vacuum of space. No air, no sound, just death. That is what the Zarnak did, quietly, quickly, without guilt. The 10 miners vanished into the stars. The Zarnak ship turned and left. The commander made no note of what had happened. To him, it didn't matter. They believed Earth would not care. They thought humans were too weak to respond. The Zarnak had done things like this before. They had taken land, stolen ships, erased people, and the galaxy had stayed quiet. So they believed this would be no different. Just 10 humans, just a mining crew. No war, no danger. But this time they were wrong. Earth noticed first when the mining ship didn't check in. Every ship is supposed to send a signal back after each mission, but no signal came. At first, Earth Space Control thought it was just a delay. Maybe a small problem. Maybe the crew was fixing something. But after 1 day, 2 days, a full week, they knew something was wrong. Families of the miners began to worry. One little girl waited every night for her father to call. A young boy kept asking his mother, "Where, Uncle Joe?" A woman who had once smiled every morning now sat in silence, staring out the window, waiting for a voice that would never come. The company that owned the mining ship tried to contact it. Nothing, not even a broken signal. Then a technician checked the last known location of the ship. It had been close to Zarnak territory, not inside their space, but close. That was a red flag, and it made people nervous. A secret recording was found. A signal short and weak had been picked up by a satellite. It was the voice of one of the miners. He said, "Zarnak patrol approaching, asking for ID, wait," and then silence. That was the last anyone heard. When the news reached Earth's leaders, they sat in quiet rooms and listened. No one shouted, but their faces turned hard. This wasn't just an accident. This was something more, something darker. The Zarnak had erased 10 human lives as if they meant nothing, but they meant everything. Each miner had someone who loved them, a daughter, a mother, a best friend. These people were not soldiers, but they were part of Earth, and Earth does not forget its people. People began to talk, quietly at first, Then louder, "Where is the ship? What did the Zarnak do? Why is no one stopping them?" Questions turned into anger. Anger turned into pain. Pain turned into purpose. Across the galaxy, some aliens noticed what had happened. A few sent small messages to Earth. One said, "We are sorry for your loss." Another whispered, "We know what the Zarnak did." Even the quiet ones, the old, wise races that rarely spoke, sent signals of support. But something even deeper was happening, something hidden. Far from the light, in old places where no laws reached, a group of orphans had been listening too. These were not children anymore. They had grown up in the dark. Their parents had died in Zarnak wars. They had no homes, no ships, no flags, but they had one thing that the Zarnak never understood. They had memory. And when they heard what happened to the 10 miners, they didn't cry. They didn't shout. They started to build. Old metal, broken ships, forgotten tools, they gathered in secret, in the shadows, in the cold. They didn't ask for help. They didn't wait for permission. They simply worked. A piece here, a bolt there, a plan forming like ice on glass. The galaxy didn't notice them. But they were coming. Because the Zarnak had made a mistake. They thought 10 lives meant nothing, but those lives had stories. Those lives had people. Those lives had meaning. And now Earth was awake. The Zarnak Empire had acted without fear. They believed they were untouchable, but even the biggest towers fall when their base is broken. The 10 lost humans were not forgotten. They were remembered. In hearts, in homes, in history. No one had cared until now. But now the galaxy was watching. And Earth was listening. And the orphans were building in the dark. The Zarnak Empire had thrown 10 human miners into space without a second thought. To them it was nothing. Just another small group of people erased. No names, no noise, no reason to worry. But what the Zarnak didn't know was that each of those 10 humans had a life behind them. They were not strangers. They were not nobodies. They had people. They had stories. And they were deeply loved. One of them was named Talia Rin. She was 29 years old. Talia had a younger brother named Milo who lived on Earth with their grandmother. Their parents had died when they were young, so Talia worked hard to support the family. Every credit she earned from mining was sent home to pay for Milo's school and their grandmother's medicine. She didn't complain. She didn't ask for help. She simply worked, and she dreamed of one day buying them a small house by the ocean. Talia wasn't just a miner. She was also one of Earth's top mechanical engineers. Before joining the mining ship, she had helped design power cores for starships. Her ideas had made engines faster and safer. People called her a genius. But when her father died, she left her job and joined the miners so she could earn money faster. No one knew she was one of the 10. When Earth found out, many gasped in disbelief. A brilliant mind had been thrown away like garbage. And Milo. When he heard what happened, he didn't cry. He opened his sister's old notebook and started building something. Another of the 10 was Joel Benton. Joel was quiet, strong, and kind. He had a wife named Ria Ma and 2 small daughters, Neela and Jas. He worked on the mining ship because he wanted to save for their future. Every time the ship landed on Earth, Joel brought home stories, rocks, and silly toys made from scrap metal. His daughters would sit on his lap and laugh as he made the toys walk across the floor. Joel's wife, Rhea, was a defense strategist. She worked in Earth's planetary protection program. She wasn't a fighter, but she knew how to design safe zones and escape routes for cities. She had always told Joel, "I worry about you up there." And he had always smiled and said, "Don't worry, the stars take care of me." But the stars didn't help that day. When the news reached her, Rhea locked herself in her room. For hours she said nothing. Then she made one call to her old friend who worked at the Earth Intelligence Grid. She said, "It's time." Rhea wasn't just sad. She was ready to act. Then there was Lane Umery, a cheerful man who loved music. Lane played the guitar and often sang to the crew during long mining shifts. His voice was soft, like warm sunlight on a cold day. He had no children, but he had hundreds of fans. He posted songs from space, and people across Earth would comment, "Thank you for making my day better." Lane dreamed of one day returning to Earth and opening a music school for orphans. What no one knew was that Lane was also the best friend of Lexa Cowery, a powerful hacker who lived off-grid on a frozen moon. Lexa had once brought down a corrupt satellite company that had been spying on farmers. She had disappeared after that. No one knew where she went. But when Lexa found out that Lane was gone, spaced by the Zarnak, she came back online. And when Lexa comes online, systems begin to shake. Another miner was Bao Li, an older man who had been on over 30 mining missions. Bao had no family left, but he treated everyone on the ship like his children. He made tea, told jokes, and fixed broken equipment with a smile. People called him Uncle Bao. He had once been a captain in Earth's Navy but had left to live a quiet life. When he died, an old crew member from his Navy days said, "The man who saved my life has been thrown away like trash. This cannot stand." The fifth human was Lena Voss. She was shy, kept to herself, and didn't talk much, but she had a secret. Lena was a poet. On her tablet were hundreds of poems about stars, silence, home, and hope. One of her poems had been published under a fake name and had become very popular. Teenagers shared it, teachers read it in schools, and soldiers kept copies in their packs. No one knew Lena wrote it until she was gone. When the truth came out, the poem was read aloud in 10 cities. People cried. She had touched so many lives with her words, and now she was lost. There was also Omar Zaid, a former soldier turned miner. He had served in Earth's defense during the Battle of Veneris. He had seen too much war and wanted peace. He had chosen the quiet life of mining, hopping to escape the memories of battle, but peace never came. His old commander, who had once called Omar the bravest man I ever knew, was furious. He stood before Earth's council and said, "One of our best has been killed. What will you do now?" Another was Safia Del, a bright young woman just starting her first job in space. She was excited to explore the stars. She kept a journal and wrote letters to her parents every night. Her dream was to become a pilot. She had passed all her training exams with top marks. The mining mission was just the beginning for her. Now her parents read her letters and cry. They told a reporter she wanted to fly. Now she's gone without even a goodbye. Then came Jiro Tanaka, an inventor who could fix anything. People joked that if you gave him a rock, he could turn it into a coffee machine. He made gadgets for fun, tiny robots that danced, small lights that blinked to music. He was working on a new kind of drill that would make mining safer. That design was lost when the Zarnak spaced him, or so they thought. But Jiro's sister, a scientist on Mars, had copies of his blueprints. She now works day and night to finish what he started. The last miner was Eleni Castro, a mother of 3 who took the job to support her kids after her husband passed away. Her children, aged 6 to 12, still wait by the window every evening, hopping to see her ship land. The oldest, Marco, says, "Maybe Mom is just lost in space. Maybe she'll find her way back." Their aunt tries to comfort them, but the truth is heavy, and the anger in Earth cities is growing. Each of the 10 miners had someone, a mother, a brother, a best friend, a partner, a fan, a commander, a student, a child. The Zarnak thought they were nameless, but they were not. Their names were spoken every day. Their pictures were shared. Their stories were told in classrooms, in news reports, and in secret underground meetings. The world began to change. People who had never met the miners began to feel their loss. A boy in a wheelchair painted a mural of Talia flying through space. A girl made a song for Joel's daughters. A teacher asked her class to write letters to Eleni's children, telling them they were not alone. Across Earth, grief turned into strength. The Zarnak had hurt the wrong people. They thought they had killed 10 strangers, but they had awakened thousands. Families, friends, experts, fighters, builders, even strangers who had only known the miners through a smile, a song, or a shared meal. Now the galaxy knew. Earth was not just angry, Earth was ready. Because the 10 weren't just workers. They were heroes. And heroes are never forgotten. The world did not explode with anger right away. Earth did not launch big rockets or send out soldiers. There were no loud threats, no huge headlines screaming about revenge. The response started small, so small that the Zarnak didn't even notice at first. But it had begun. The first thing to go missing was a ship, a Zarnak cargo ship called Velkar 9. It was traveling through a quiet trade lane far from danger. It was carrying food, medicine, and tools from one base to another. The ship never arrived. The crew sent no message. The tracking signal stopped suddenly. Just silence. Zarnak officials thought it was a glitch. "It must be a storm," they said. "It's nothing, we'll find it soon." But they didn't. Search ships looked for weeks. Nothing was found. It had vanished like mist. Then a mining station on the moon of Tharn 3 shut down without warning. The lights turned off. The air systems failed. The workers ran outside, confused and coughing. The control tower was frozen. No alarms had gone off. No one had touched the main power. It just stopped, all at once. Still, the Zarnak leaders didn't worry. "Machines break," one commander said with a smirk. "This is no big deal." He laughed with his officers. But while he laughed, someone was listening. Someone was watching. Another week passed. Then a shipyard located near the outer rim of Zarnak space started losing its supplies. One day it had everything it needed: metal, wires, fuel. The next day all the crates were empty. No one had entered the yard. The cameras showed nothing. But the items were gone, every single piece. It was like the wind had taken it. Soon more problems came. A Zarnak pilot tried to launch his scout ship, but when he pressed the start button, all the lights turned red. The engine wouldn't move. The screens blinked a message: "Not yours." He called the base for help, but no one could figure it out. After hours of checking every wire, the message was still there. Not yours. The pilot was furious. "Who is doing this?" he yelled. But the message gave no name. It only blinked slowly again and again. And still Earth said nothing. No one from Earth came forward. No government made a statement. There were no videos, no threats, no demands, just quiet, and missing things, and broken systems. It wasn't just big things either. Tiny events started to pile up. A shipment of water vanished in space. A Zarnak scientist tried to log into her lab but found her password erased. A communications tower on a peaceful planet started playing an old human song, Lane Humori's voice singing from deep space. Musical note: stars remember what hearts forget. Musical note. The Zarnak grew nervous. "Is this sabotage?" one general asked. "Are we under attack?" But no one could answer. The radar showed nothing. The maps were clean, and yet the problems continued. Then a small note appeared on a public message board used by Zarnak traders. It read, "10 lights were put out. Now 10 storms begin." The message disappeared after a few seconds, but not before 100 traders saw it. Some took screenshots. Some shared it in secret, and all of them felt the chill of fear crawl up their necks. The Zarnak still believed they were safe. "This is only bad luck," the leaders said. "No one can reach us. Earth is weak." But even as they said it, they began moving their best ships closer to home, just in case. But Earth was not weak. Earth was planning. And Earth was not alone. In quiet corners of space, others had begun to act too. A group of old star pilots, retired from the Earth fleet, met in a dark hangar on Saturn's moon, Titan. They brought out their old gear, dusted off maps, and began to fly again. On Mars, a young coder named Juno cracked into a forgotten Zarnak file and left behind a note. "We have not forgotten. You shouldn't either." Then she closed the file before anyone could trace her. She smiled as she shut her computer. That was just the beginning. In the icy tunnels under Europa, a group of teens who called themselves the Echo built small spy drones using scraps. They flew the drones into Zarnak zones and sent back photos. They didn't say much, but their images spoke loudly. Empty ships, quiet bases, and blinking screens. Even children were starting to join. One group in Kenya used paper and glue to build models of the lost mining ship. They put them in the river and watched them float, singing the names of the 10 miners as the tiny boats sailed away. A little girl said, "They went to the stars, but they are not gone." And still the Zarnak laughed. "Earth is emotional," they said. "They cry, they write poems, but they cannot fight." They smiled in their high towers, but those smiles were not as strong as before. The quiet revenge was working, not with guns, not with fire, but with fear. Because fear grows when answers disappear. And the Zarnak had no answers. A Zarnak leader received a message on his private screen. It said, "Ask the stars who we are. They remember us." There was no name, no code, no signal trace, just the message, glowing soft and steady. The leader turned off his screen and locked the door behind him. The galaxy started to notice. Other empires began whispering. "What's happening to the Zarnak?" some asked. They seem unsure. Traders moved their routes. Ships avoided Zarnak space. Everyone had heard the stories. None wanted to be next. A new pattern began to form. One station went dark every few days. A small post lost power. A cargo ship drifted off path. The events were not huge. No one died, but the message was clear: we are watching. We are moving. We are not gone. Even the Zarnak's own people grew worried. In cities across their world, citizens asked, "Are we safe?" A teacher told her class, "We must not anger others." A merchant locked his shop early and closed his windows. A mother whispered to her child, "Stay home today." The fear grew not from war but from silence. No ships appeared in the sky. No armies marched on Zarnak's soil. But every broken machine, every lost crate, every sudden power failure reminded them, something is coming. And then one night a signal was heard across the stars. A soft, steady beat like a heart. It played on an old frequency, not used in years. It was the exact same signal used by the lost mining ship, Ship Delta 47. It beat once, then twice, then 10 times, then silence. The message said nothing, but it didn't need words. People across Earth looked up at the stars and nodded. They understood. The signal meant we remember, we begin. And somewhere far, far away, in the deep black places where light doesn't reach, small engines hummed to life. They weren't fast, they weren't loud, but they were moving. Quiet ships built in the dark, powered by hope and pain, began their journey. The Zarnak thought they had won. But small revenge had started. And small things grow. One step. One move. One truth at a time. Commander Ural sat at her desk deep inside the Zarnak Empire's central command center. The room was cold, made of smooth gray walls and glowing screens. Most days she read daily reports quickly. They were usually full of small problems, whether shift, slow cargo, small system bugs. But now something was different. The reports were piling up. One ship lost, then a station offline, then another cargo load gone missing, then a sudden blackout. It kept happening. Different places, different days, but all too close together. At first, the commanders and generals above her didn't care. They laughed off the issues. "It's space," one general had said. "Things break, ships go missing, nothing new." But Ural wasn't so sure. The missing ship logs had no signs of space storms. The stations didn't show power problems before they went dark. There was no sign of pirate attacks, no signs of fire, no open calls for help. Just quiet, too quiet. She started keeping a secret file. In it, she circled the names of every ship, station, or system that had gone offline or missing. One red dot on her map, then another. Slowly, it began to form a ring around Zarnak space, a shape that looked like a noose. Ural wasn't the only one who noticed strange things. Across the Empire, low-level workers were whispering. One engineer said her control panel turned off for 10 seconds, then came back with a message in human language. 10 were taken. Now 10 return. Another pilot swore that his ship's navigation turned him away from his path and led him in circles, only stopping when a small human lullaby played on the comms. These stories spread in secret, and with them, fear began to rise. The strange part wasn't just what was happening, it was how. There was no fire, No fights, no sound of weapons, no demands. Whoever was doing this wasn't trying to destroy. They were simply sending a message. We are here. That message came in many forms. A ship locked its doors and wouldn't open until a code was spoken in Earth's old tongue. A food storage unit changed all its labels to show names of the lost miners. A factory stopped working, and when they opened the machine core, they found a small music chip playing the same song over and over again. Lane Yumery's voice, soft and slow, singing about stars and silence. Ural brought her findings to the High Council. They sat tall in their chairs, dressed in heavy armor, proud and cold. She pointed at the map, at the red ring growing tighter. She told them this was not chance. This is a pattern, she said. Whoever is doing this knows our weak points. They are moving without being seen. One general rolled his eyes, another scoffed. Do you believe Earth is behind this? Their ships are old. Their army is small. They couldn't find their way out of their own solar system. Ural stood still and calm. Maybe it's not Earth's army, she said. Maybe it's something else, something they raised in the dark. After that meeting, nothing was said in public. But behind closed doors, the Empire began to act. Extra guards were placed at major stations, patrols were doubled, secret checks were done on all main systems. The Empire wasn't laughing anymore. But still, no one wanted to admit the truth. They were being watched. They were being touched not by a big force but by many small ones. And that scared them even more. Commander Ural stayed up late every night reading new reports. A patrol had returned from the edge of space with all lights turned off and half the crew missing. A drone had sent back footage of a human-shaped figure standing still in the dark, surrounded by floating machines. One cargo ship, when opened, had every crate inside rearranged to spell out the names of the 10 miners. No alarms were ever triggered. No signs of entry. Just messages left like fingerprints. The worst part was not knowing. Not knowing who was doing it, not knowing how, not knowing when it would stop or if it would stop. It made the Empire feel small and weak and afraid. That fear grew slowly like frost creeping over a window. Workers began quitting their jobs at outer stations. Pilots asked to be reassigned. Some families moved away from border worlds. They didn't speak about it. They didn't need to. They all felt it. Something was coming. One day, a simple message blinked onto screens in over 30 different stations at once. It was not loud. It was not long. It said, "We are not gone. We are preparing." Then the screens went dark again. Panic started to spread. But Earth said nothing. No one claimed it. No one stepped forward. The silence was louder than words. Ural knew this was not war, at least not yet. This was warning. A slow drumbeat, a whisper in the ear, a hand on the shoulder. She spoke with a few trusted officers. They didn't laugh. They listened. One of them said, "We may have woken something deep." Another nodded. "We always thought Earth was soft. Maybe we were wrong." News of the 10 miners was now known across many planets. Some Zarnak citizens were starting to ask questions. Why were they killed? Was it legal? What if Earth comes for us? The Empire tried to block news channels. They tried to change the story. But truth moved faster than lies. Stories of the lost 10 were now in songs, poems, and even games. Children on different planets whispered their names like ghost stories, and everyone knew who they were now. One night, a famous Zarnak general walked to his ship and found it had been cleaned, spotless, polished, perfect. But on the glass of the front window, written in dust, were the words, "The stars remember." That general didn't fly that day. He didn't speak. He just stood there staring. And the fear grew. Earth had not sent armies. No one had invaded. No worlds had been taken. But the Zarnak Empire was losing something greater than land. They were losing control. They could not stop what they could not see, and they could not answer what they did not understand. Ural received a final message one morning. It came in her private inbox. There was no sender, no subject line, only one sentence written in Earth's old language. "You looked up when others looked away. That was wise." Then it vanished. She sat quietly for a long time. She didn't tell anyone about it. She didn't write it down. She simply stood up, walked to the window, and stared into the stars. They used to make her feel strong. Now they made her feel small, but also awake. The Zarnak Empire had believed no one would care about the 10 humans they killed. They believed Earth was silent. They believed the galaxy would turn away. But now someone was moving. Not with fire, but with focus. Not with war, but with warning. And deep down, the Zarnak knew. The humans were not scared. They were getting ready. Far below the clouds of Earth, deep inside a quiet mountain, a hidden door opened with a soft hiss. Few people knew it was there. Even fewer knew what happened behind it. The door led into a long tunnel, cold and dark. At the end of that tunnel was a room, simple and silent. No flags, no screens, just a round table and empty chairs. But one by one, the chairs began to fill. They were not filled with politicians or news reporters. These were not people who spoke loudly or smiled for cameras. They were people who had lost someone, a sister, a child, a friend, a crew member, a partner. Each person had a reason to be there, and each one carried the same feeling deep inside. Something had to be done. The first to speak was a man named Elias Cade. He was a former starship pilot and had flown more missions than anyone else in the room. His hands were rough. His voice was calm. His daughter, Safia, had been one of the 10. She had been full of dreams, always asking questions about stars and planets. "They threw her into space like she was nothing," he said. "So now we build something out of that nothing." Next was Myra Song, a scientist from Mars. Her brother Gyro had been a miner. He had made small machines that helped ships run better. He had a laugh that filled every room and a brain that never stopped thinking. "He left behind blueprints," Myra said. "Tools, engines, codes. He wanted to make the galaxy safer. So that's what I'll do. For him." A woman named Riama Benton sat across from her. Riama had once helped design defense systems. She knew how to build shields, gates, and traps. She had lost her husband, Joel, to the cold vacuum of space. Her voice was quiet but steady. "They took his warmth from this world," she said. "Now they will feel the cold we carry." At the far end of the table sat Lexa Cowery. She had no title, no badge, just a sharp mind and a cold stare. She had once hacked a planet-wide system using only a broken console and a borrowed signal. Her best friend Lane had been one of the 10. His voice still played in her memories. "He sang to everyone, even when life was hard," she said. "Now I'll speak for him in another way. Let's get started." More people arrived. a doctor who had treated one of the miners' children, a teacher who had read Lena Voss's poems to her class, a space farmer who once worked with Bao Li, an old engineer who had trained Talia Rin. None of them wore armor. None of them carried weapons. But they had something more powerful than that: purpose. Together they formed a new team, one that had no name, no flag, and no need for fame. They didn't care who got credit. They didn't care about glory. All they wanted was to prepare. And so Earth's secret plan began. They started in the dark under the ground where no satellite could see. Hidden hangars opened, long abandoned by the old space wars. People who had once left Earth returned quietly, bringing skills, parts, and ideas. Some came from Mars, some from Luna, others from forgotten colonies at the edge of known space. The work was hard, supplies were limited, power had to be saved. Everything was slow at first, but no one gave up. They built with careful hands and steady hearts. Ships were shaped out of metal and memory. Programs were written with silent fury. Engines were tested, broken, rebuilt, and tested again. One by one, the pieces came together. A girl named Nia, just 16 years old, helped design cloaking tech for the new ships. Her mother had worked with Lena on the same mining vessel. Nia had never met her, but she carried her photo every day. "If she could write poems in space," Nia said, "then I can write code in her name." A boy named Milo, younger than anyone else in the room, sat beside the builders each day. His sister, Talia, had been one of the 10. He didn't speak much, but he fixed every tool that broke and cleaned every bolt that fell. One day he left a note near the engine room. It said, "For my sister, make them remember." Above ground, news moved slowly. The public only knew bits and pieces. Some people thought Earth had given up. Others believed Earth was scared. But those working in the shadows said nothing, because secrets grow best in silence. Even Earth's leaders didn't know everything. A few trusted officials were told just enough to protect the mission. They agreed to fund small projects that looked harmless but were really part of something larger. A deep space telescope, actually a tracker for Zarnak movements. A new mining tool, really a stealth device. A school computer update. A hidden training program for orphan coders. As the work grew, so did the team. People from other planets started to help. A group on Saturn's moon built signal jammers. A colony on Neptune sent rare crystals used in ship cores. A Mars research lab tested fuel that left no trail. None of them asked for pay. None of them wanted reward. They just wanted to be part of something that mattered. Every week the team held 1 minute of silence for each of the 10. No one spoke, no one moved, they just remembered, and then they went back to work. One night Elias stood at the edge of the shipyard staring at the stars. A quiet hum filled the air. The first stealth ship was ready. It didn't shine, it didn't roar, but it could move without being seen. Its name was painted in small letters near the wing. Memory 1. Inside, the ship held tools, not bombs. Lights, not guns. Ideas, not fear, but it was strong. And it was ready. Other ships followed. Memory 2, Memory 3, all built in secret, all built with care, all shaped by loss, hope, and skill. But Earth's plan was not just to build ships. It was also to build minds. Young people were trained in ways no school had ever done before. They learned coding, tracking, building, flying. They studied old battles and old mistakes. They read the names of the 10 every morning. They called themselves the Bright. A girl named Layla, whose uncle had worked with Gyro, led the first training group. She wasn't strong. She wasn't tall, but she was sharp. The Zarnak forgot something, she told her class. They forgot we learn, and now we're learning fast. They trained in old caves. They drilled in empty fields. They practiced moving without sound. They learned how to take over machines without breaking them. They didn't want war, but they wanted to be ready if war found them. And still, Earth said nothing to the stars. No one sent threats. No one made demands. The planet stayed quiet. On the surface, everything looked normal. But under the ground and beyond the clouds, the plan was growing. Some plans were quiet and small, like planting seeds in soil. Others were loud and fast, like sending test drones into deep space. But all of them had one goal: to make sure the 10 were never forgotten, and to make sure no one ever hurt Earth again without answer. One day, Myra looked over the plans for a signal device. It was simple, just a light that could blink in patterns, but she smiled. "It's not a weapon," she said. "It's a voice. A voice for those who can no longer speak." Another day, Lexa broke into a Zarnak system just to leave a picture behind. It showed all 10 miners standing together, smiling in their work suits. Under the photo were just 4 words: "We are still here." The first attack didn't look like an attack at all. It happened at a small Zarnak supply station in the middle of a quiet sector. One day the doors opened just fine. The next they wouldn't budge. No alarms, no signs of damage, just still, silent steel. The guards tried every code they knew. The power lights were green, but the system wouldn't move. Then, the screen on the control panel blinked once and showed one short message: "Closed for remembrance." No one knew what to do. The guards waited for orders. They called for help, but nothing worked. The station was locked from the inside and no one could explain how. A few days later, a drone station on the outer rim suddenly stopped sending reports. When a repair team arrived, the place was quiet. Nothing was broken, but every drone had vanished. In their place sat 10 empty crates. Inside each one was a folded piece of paper. Handwritten on each paper were names, 10 names. The names of the lost miners. The team left in silence. No one touched the papers. More strange things followed. A cargo ship landed on a planet to deliver fuel, but when the workers opened the cargo hold, they found nothing but flowers. Small, glowing flowers, ones that only grow on Earth. Each flower had a ribbon tied around it marked with a number: 1, 2, 3, all the way to 10. Earth hadn't fired a single shot, but the Zarnak Empire began to panic. They doubled their guards at every post. They shut down spaceports for inspections. They scanned every ship and drone entering their zones. Still, they found nothing. The attacks kept coming, but they weren't normal attacks. There were no blasts, no flames, no destruction, but they were powerful in another way. They told a story. They told the Zarnak, "We are here. We have not forgotten." One night, a fleet of 3 patrol ships floated into a strange fog near the edge of Zarnak space. When they came out on the other side, all their data systems had been wiped clean. Their maps, messages, files gone. In their place, each screen now showed a poem, just 4 lines. We walked the dark and knew your names. We held our breath, we took your blame. We rise now not with fire or hate. We rise with silence at your gate. The Zarnak tried to trace the signal, but it had no source, no pulse, no heat, just words soft and still. Outposts began to fall, but not in flames. One by one, their systems shut off. One base opened its doors and found all their weapons moved into neat lines, stacked carefully with a note that said, "You don't need these." Another base lost power just long enough to see a shadow pass across the control room wall. No one was there, but the cameras replayed the image again and again. A quiet figure with glowing eyes and a badge from Earth's mining fleet. At first, Zarnak leaders ordered full lockdowns. No ships in or out, no messages shared, no reports sent, but even that didn't help. A quiet fleet was already moving through space, ships built on Earth, flown by those who had trained in secret. They didn't scream. They didn't boast. They simply arrived, took what was needed, and left a message. This is the price of silence. One fleet landed without sound at a refueling base and took over the system in 5 minutes. They didn't break anything. They didn't hurt anyone. They just sat the staff down and said, "You may leave now. This place belongs to memory." The staff left, walking out slowly, not sure what had just happened. The strange part, the Earth crew cleaned the station before they left. They even left food and supplies in case the Zarnak workers needed to return. Another time, a set of satellites that watched the trade lane stopped spinning. They simply froze. When repair crews checked, they found no damage. Just one small wire disconnected, and a small recording playing softly on repeat. The voice was human. The voice said, "Stop now or lose more." People across the Zarnak Empire began whispering. Earth doesn't want war, they said, but they're not afraid of it either. Even young cadets fresh from training started to question things. If they wanted to hurt us, one said, they would have done it already. They want us to feel what they felt, quiet, lost, alone. The attacks didn't stop. They got smarter. A large command ship called Valthar 17 suddenly lost all steering control mid-flight. It drifted for 2 hours before gently landing on a safe planet where the crew was able to walk out. When they opened the main console, they found one small gift box. Inside it were 10 stone carvings, tiny human faces, carved with care. Zarnak leaders called emergency meetings. "They are controlling our systems," one shouted. "We must strike back." But strike how? Earth had not declared war. There were no enemy flags, no official fleets, only silent hands, hidden minds, ships that moved like ghosts. Commander Ural, still watching everything, stood up in one of those meetings. "They are giving us a chance," she said. "They are not breaking our bones, they are reaching for our conscience." Some laughed. Others stayed silent. But everyone knew the fear was real now. Soon the Zarnak economy began to feel the pressure. Without full control of their stations, shipments were delayed. Planets began running low on supplies. Trade partners pulled away, afraid of being part of whatever was coming. But Earth said nothing. Their ships came and went without a sound. They cleaned what they used. They left messages but took nothing more than was needed. People started to talk about Earth with respect. They could burn us, one worker said, but instead they remind us. A young Zarnak soldier wrote to his family, "I don't know what to believe anymore. They walk through our stations like they know us, like they once trusted us, and we broke that." The quiet attacks continued. One ship entered a station and replaced every file with images of the 10 lost humans. Another crew left a fresh garden growing in a space where fuel used to be stored. One message was found written in dust on a cracked control screen. We were workers. We were people. We were loved. The strange thing was this. The Zarnak soldiers weren't angry. Many of them were touched. These attacks weren't about power. They were about something else, something deeper, something heavier. One captain gave up her post after receiving a sealed letter from someone she never met. The letter said, "You trained beside Lena once. She sang when the lights went out. You smiled. We remember." She had never told anyone about that memory. Another station stopped fighting back completely. When Earth's quiet ship arrived, the commander stood outside with his hands up. "You may enter," he said. "We won't stop you, but tell me, will this end?" The human who stepped off the ship said only this: "It ends when they are named." Word of this spread across systems. Some called Earth cruel, others called them just. Some said they had turned their sadness into strength. Others feared what might come next. But Earth's message was the same every time. Stop now or lose more. They didn't destroy. They didn't take over. They simply reminded. And in the quiet of space, those reminders were louder than any weapon. The Zarnak Empire was growing desperate. Earth's quiet attacks were not like anything they had seen before. Stations had gone dark, ships stopped working. Nothing was damaged, yet everything was broken. Earth was not using bombs, they were using silence, and it was working. Zarnak commanders wanted it to end. They wanted Earth to feel weak again. So they made a plan. It would be a trap. A fake ship would move slowly through space. It would look easy to steal. It would look like it carried fuel and food. But it would not be real. It would be bait. Hidden nearby, Zarnak placed 6 powerful warships. These ships were buried under the surface of a quiet moon. They had big guns, smart tools, and many trained fighters. They were told to stay quiet and wait. If a human ship came close, they would spring the trap. They would surround the ship and capture the crew. This time they would not fail, or so they thought. The fake ship was launched. It looked normal. Its lights blinked softly. Its engines glowed low. It followed a slow path between 2 distant stations. It sent out signals just like a normal cargo ship. The trap was ready. At first, nothing happened. The fake ship floated alone for hours, then days. The warship stayed still, hidden inside the moon. Their scanners watched every signal. Then a small shape appeared in the corner of the radar. A human ship, just one. It was quiet and fast, like a shadow moving through the stars. The Zarnak commanders smiled. "They took the bait," one said. "Get ready." All the warships powered up quietly. Their weapons were aimed. Their engines were warm. They prepared to launch. But then something strange happened. One warship's lights blinked, then its screen went black. "Reset," the crew shouted. Nothing worked. The screen stayed dark. A second ship had the same problem, then a third. Soon all 6 warships were dark and still. Nothing moved, nothing worked. The crews were confused. They checked every system. They tried to restart the power. They shouted orders and pressed buttons, but the ships did not answer. They were trapped inside their own trap. A message appeared on the screen of each ship, just 3 words: "We saw you." The message flashed once, then disappeared. Another screen lit up. This time it showed 10 faces, smiling human faces. The faces of the 10 miners who had been killed. The same 10 who had been thrown into space. They looked alive in those pictures. Happy, full of life. A soft voice came next. Calm, human. "You built a trap for us," it said, "but we were already inside." The crews froze. No one spoke. No one moved. They could feel their hearts pounding. The voice was not loud, but it was strong. "You do not understand us. That is why you keep losing." The message ended. The screens turned off. Then the ship doors opened by themselves, not by force but by code. The Earth team had already taken control. The Zarnak crews were allowed to leave. Every person was unharmed. Every person made it out. No one was hurt. No one was taken. But no one ever forgot what they saw. The human ship was gone. It had left without a sound. No trail, no signal, just silence. The Zarnak commanders had no way to explain what had happened. The trap they made had caught only themselves. Commander Ural watched the recordings from the warships. She sat alone in her room, her face calm. "They do not act like us," she said softly. "They do not strike with fire, they strike with thought." Other leaders did not speak. Their faces were pale. Their pride had been broken. Again. The news spread quickly across the empire. Everyone was talking about it. "The trap was ours," said one soldier, "but the ghosts walked in first." Some people laughed, but it was not the kind of laugh that meant joy. It was the kind that meant fear. They had tried to trick Earth, but Earth had seen the trick before it was set. People across the galaxy started sharing new stories. Stories about the 10 miners, about how Earth moved, about how they never used fire yet still made the Empire afraid. A Zarnak captain told his crew, "We are not fighting an army. We are facing a memory, a strong, living memory that never sleeps." In quiet places, candles were lit for the 10. Even some Zarnak people, once proud and cold, began to feel the weight of what had been done. They had not cared when Earth cried. But now Earth was speaking back, in a way no one could ignore. Back on Earth, inside the deep mountain base, the team watched the footage. They did not clap. They did not cheer. They sat still. They read the faces of the Zarnak crews. They saw the fear. They saw the change, but they were not happy. They were only focused. This was not about victory. It was about memory and justice. Lexa, the silent hacker, turned off her screen. She whispered, "We are not ghosts. We are answers." Riama Benton, one of the builders, placed her hand on the table. "This is what quiet power looks like," she said. "Let them feel it." The group of young humans trained in secret, stood taller that day. They had learned to move in silence. They had learned to speak through systems and shadows. Now their work had been tested, and it had worked. The trap was a lesson, not just for Zarnak, for the galaxy. Zarnak's leaders tried to lie. They told the public the warships had a system bug. They blamed old wires. They said it was nothing. But the people knew better. You can't fake 10 smiling faces. You can't fake a voice that speaks with calm truth. Soon, Zarnak workers began writing the names of the 10 in chalk on the walls of stations. They wrote them in corners, on crates, in notebooks, quietly, slowly. But they wrote them. Something was changing, and it could not be stopped. The trap failed, but it did more than fail. It showed the galaxy that Earth was not hiding. Earth was moving, not with fleets, not with noise, but with thought, memory, and light. And so Earth spoke again, not with words, not with ships, but with one simple idea. You thought we would run, we didn't. We walked into your trap, and we turned it into a mirror. From that day on, the galaxy was different. The Zarnak Empire no longer felt big. Their walls no longer felt strong. Their pride no longer felt safe. Because now they knew. Earth was not gone. Earth was not weak. Earth was awake.